stand for the presentation of the colors. Very good at it.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Did you want the microphone?
No, I just want to touch it.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
You may be seated. Let's give Lily another round of applause. She has been doing this since she's about this high. Our very first program, I don't know how many years ago, Lily sang for us as just a little girl, and now she's taller than I am. That's sad, but a gracious thing to have happen. So we do thank her. I'd like to welcome everybody here today. It's wonderful to see this wonderful turnout. We are, if you were here last year, put up your hand if you were here last year. Okay. Nothing was out there, you know, so we had the whole building for the program, and since then we have filled it up, and I hope you can take some time and go through our exhibits today, especially the military exhibit. We've worked very, very hard on getting that one put together for today, as well as some of our other exhibits. And the other buildings will also be open in case you're curious as to what's going into the other buildings. I do want to welcome you to Veterans Day. It's kind of a special time each year where we can take a few moments to recognize those who have served our country or are continuing to serve our country. I found that many of our veterans who have served for funerals around here. They serve for programs like this. They serve at the football and basketball games to post colors. So they continue serving in our country. At this time, I'd like Robert Collins to come forward.
I'd like everybody to bow their head, please. Our Heavenly Father, thank you for this wonderful day, a bright day, a
first chili day. I'd like to just, all of us remember those that went on before us that served. We cannot forget about you. But on this day, let's remember the veterans that all made it home. Though a lot of our scars aren't seen, aren't felt, no sad stories at night. Let's just remember that they all served with honor, integrity, and gave the love to this country that it so rightfully deserves. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Okay, Milton Falk, I don't think is here. So, Robert, would you like to say a few words?
As far as Veterans Day, Veterans Day was originally called the Armistice Day after World War I to remember all the World War I soldiers that had given their life. That does include England, us, Australia, all the Allied troops. It was created for them. And then, I'm going to say Roosevelt decided to change it to Veterans Day in 1936. And thus it got its name Veterans Day, and that is basically what we celebrate this for, just not to remember those from World War I, but all that served throughout the history of this great nation.
Thank you. Let's give Robert a round of applause. I'd like to read this to you before we introduce our veterans. On the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month comes down to just two simple words to say. Thank you. Stop and think about this day, Veterans Day, celebrating the service of all U.S. military veterans. Notice the correct spelling holds no apostrophe. It is not needed. This is a day for all who have served. Look around you. That gentleman and that woman over there with a hat that says USMC, the woman with a t-shirt, or the gentleman that says Navy, your co-worker whose son was in the Army, or their daughter, the pilot who flew you in, his ring says Air Force, the car in the parking lot that says Coast Guard. Stop, ask, and thank them for their service. Not just today, but every day. To the veterans of the past, thank you. To the veterans of the present, thank you. Because of you, we will remember to say thank you to the veterans of the future. And I know we have at least one veteran of the future here today with us. So where is Peyton Falk? He must be out there. So we have a good representation. So we have a veteran of the future with us here today. Let's give all these veterans. I do want to mention to you that we keep a running total, or try to, of veterans from around here, and it never ceases to amaze me when we think we have them all, another one pops up. And just within the past 2 weeks, another Vietnam veteran popped up, which gives us 96 veterans from the Onega and surrounding area on file here in the museum. And then another World War II veteran popped up also. And when I put his record in there, I noticed he was number 166th of the World War II veterans from this area. So there are a lot of veterans out there that we're not aware of. And if you think there's a veteran that we don't know about, please let us know that. And we've had people say, well, the veteran I know lives in Minnesota. Well, if they know somebody in Onega, Kansas, there's a connection. And we won't deny anyone the right to be mentioned in our continuing list. So feel free to add veterans today if you know some. I also want you, as you go through, to notice the beginning of our exhibit on women veterans. It's growing. It's taking some time. I'm finding the women are kind of modest in wanting to share their records. So we're working hard on getting those all together. At this time, if Linda Rodenkamp would come up, we'll have each veteran introduce, and I'll have Linda kind of move the microphone around. That's-
Okay, who you start?
Front row.
Maybe you'll start with you. I'm not sure who she started.
Reintroduce, I'm Robert Collins. I served 20 years in the United States Army as an armor crewman on M1A2 battle tanks. My first war was in Desert Storm, and then I followed on and did 2 more tours in Operation Iraqi Freedom.
Okay, we'll come back. Are you gonna announce them and then I go?
No, I was just going to
'cause-
pass them around. pass
Okay,
it around.
keep going.
Just pass it around.
Okay, there we go. There's somebody.
Gail Wag, I did 20 years in the U.S. Army.
Down this way. No? Okay. Down this way. No? That was real.
Yeah.
You gotta recognize it. All right.
Dennis Drogi, I'm from the county to the north, basically. I served 20 years in the Kansas National Guard, 2 major deployments, stateside during Vietnam, Bosnia during Operation Joint Endeavor.
Yes, right here. Yeah, come on, up you go.
Bob Magnet, United States Navy. 4 years and 4 months. I got out right about the time Vietnam was starting, good, hot and heavy.
I'm Willie Evans, I served 2 years in the United States Navy along the coast of Vietnam on a guided missile cruiser. Larry Jefferson spent 6 years in Kansas National Guard from 1964 to 1970. I'm Dave Jenner, I served in the United States Army, 1969 to 1970, was going through Vietnam.
I don't think so.
Peyton Volk, I'm Kansas Army National Guard. I'm currently serving.
Did we miss anybody?
You did.
Lynn says he's not gonna stand up. Okay, and who else?
Sandy Ernst.
Down here. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Sandy Ernst Rogers. I served in the Air Force for 20 years. I did not have to dodge bullets. I just patched them up once they did get punched with bullets, okay?
Lynn, you gonna say what you used to do? Were you gonna say what you used to do? No? All right, he typed, he said. That's what he was telling me to do.
And Grace also.
And Grace.
And I don't know if you know my brother Eugene Hildebrand. He was in the Army at the end of World War II and then went on to, was recalled for the Korean War. And with us today is his daughter.
Oh,
She's here.
Thank you to all of you for your service. At this time, I'd like to introduce Grace Springer. Many of you know her or know of her husband. Phil served in the United States Air Force, and I'll let her explain his length of service and all of his awards and medals. We have a very, very nice display of things that Grace has donated to the museum explaining his career. So when we're done here today, take some time to look at that. Grace and her daughter Lee is with her. are going to share some military stories over the decades.
I guess I'll say is the mic on working okay? I am 90 years old and standing can be hard, but I feel like I make better eye contact if I stand, but forgive me. Anyway, I'm going to start with a couple of questions. How many years do you think Bill served? Any idea? It's 26 and a half years. How many different houses do you think we lived in during that? 17 different houses we lived in during this. How old do you think he was when he retired? He was 48. And my last question, this might be, how much of his pension do you think I got? 0. Anyway, let me start with, he graduated from Omaha University up in Omaha and was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the ROTC. He went through the ROTC program. There was a 6-week delay between the time he was commissioned and when he got a slot at in a flying to learn how to fly. During that 6 weeks, we met, dated for 3 weeks, and eloped. We were married 57 plus years, so I guess it was okay. No, they had to learn how to fly, so they learned in a T-24 that's comparable to a civilian Piper Cub. And then he went to Laredo Air Force Base, which at that time was a hellhole. Checked out in the T-33, it was a jet. It was known as the Shooting Star. That was one of the most used airplanes during the Korean War. Then, well, I have to tell you, we met our first tragedy, if you want to say that. 4 days before they got their wings, he came home one day, excuse me, and he said, honey, Frank crashed and burned today. He and his instructor crashed and burned. Now, Frank and Judy were 2 of our very, very good friends. Laredo at that time, nobody had air conditioning except they had a little portable air conditioner in their windows, so we spent many a Sunday afternoon with them. Judy was 7 months pregnant, and it was, sad. Then he had a decision to make. Was he going to serve his 3 years, get out, go back to Iowa and probably be a farmer, or was he going to sign a 5-year commitment and, be a fighter pilot? By this time, he'd already decided he was going to be a fighter pilot, and it would be his career. So we went to Tyndall Air Force Base, where he checked out in the F-86 Dog. That was his. And there we went to our first squadron. Oh, we were so excited. We were all young. We were all having babies. It was a fun time. All 3 of our children were born there. Jeff, the youngest, was born while Phil was on temporary duty. He didn't see his daddy for 2 weeks. That was kind of, everybody was without their families. So our friends became our families. It was a camaraderie that it's hard to describe. Again, this was another sad time. He came home and he said, Grace, Lou, who was his flight commander, crashed and burned this morning. Again, they were friends. Our babies, we put them in the same crib together while we played cards. We exchanged, it was sad. The sad thing was, it was my 22nd birthday. So now, every birthday, it crosses my mind. This is the day that Lou was killed. Where did we go from there? He was sent to Montgomery, Alabama, to go to a school. Montgomery in 1959 was in the midst of integration, segregation. You have no idea, compared to what they call racism now, what that was like then. I'll give you an example. We had a colored lady that babysat for us. And when the church I was going to needed someone to work in the nursery, I recommended her. She and her sister worked in the nursery, but they were not allowed to worship with us. I mean, they just were not allowed. And we were told if we had any parties, if our group had any parties, do not have them at your house. Do not. If you want to entertain them, go to the officers' club. You think nobody will find out, but they will. And if they find out, it'll be hell to pay. Well, instead of going back to California like we thought, he got orders for be a radar operator at the top of Indian Mountain, which was 175 miles northwest of Fairbanks, Alaska. It was, their job was to watch the radar to make sure none of the Russians came over the Bering Strait and invaded us. He left on April 25th, 1960. Jeff was 1, Scott was 2.5, and Lee was 3.5. We didn't see him until April 27th, 1961. It was a whole year that, well, it was not a fun year. It was not. Then we went to Sioux City. Again, he was a radar operator. Now it was computerized. And this was a big deal. It was computerized. Well, the computer was probably as big as the back half of that building. It was. And now, you know, we look at our watch and talk to our watch. And it was quite a thing. We were very, very joyful when after 18 months at Sioux City, they said, back to a flying job, back to a squadron. Oh, wow, that was Minot, North Dakota. Oh. But it was so exciting to be going back to the fighter squadron that we didn't care. Fortunately for us, they changed it to Great Falls, Montana, which was better, We spent 3.5 years at Great Falls. It was, you know, pretty exciting, the kids were in school. Everything went pretty well, except one day my mom was there visiting, and she and I had gone into town. We lived on base for lunch, do some shopping, and came home, and everything seemed, you know, until Phil was on alert. He called me. He didn't come home. He called me. He said, "Did you hear about what happened today?" No. Well, he was a check pilot, so he was giving a check ride to one of the guys. It was just like a proficiency test. It was, fortunately for him, Chuck Ailey was an outstanding pilot. They took off, and the nose gear would not come up and lock. It wouldn't go down and lock. It was, so for an hour and a half, they flew around the pattern at the base, had to burn out the fuel. They had a full fuel tank plus 2 tip tanks, so that, and it was kind of interesting. 2 of the guys went home and got their cameras and filmed. The postman found out who it was, and of course, you know, when the airplane's going round and round, something's wrong. It's not. The postman found out who it was, and he was going from house to house saying, "Oh yeah, that's Phil Springer and Chuck Ailey up there." Okay, so everybody knew about it but me. The fuel was burned out. It's time to land, and an airplane is easier to land from the front seat than the back seat, and Phil, as a check pilot, was in the back seat. So I say it was very great that Chuck was one of an outstanding pilots. They came down, and the plane had a drag chute, so they deployed the drag chute, which slowed it down. He held it nose up as long as he could, and finally the nose came down, and sparks flew. There was a little bit of residual fuel left in the tank, which ignited the drag chute. Well, it looked like the whole plane went up with it. And the commander of the squadron was in mobile control, and it happened right in front of him. And maybe it's kind of vulgar to say, but he almost had to go home and change his underwear. I have a DVD and a little thing on a clip that I forgot to bring today that I was going to give to Debbie, and then you can play a show from the time they hit the ground until, well, you even see Phil walking out of the plane when it was over. That was our excitement at Great Falls, Montana. One thing I forgot, it was while we were at our first squadron in California, they pulled alert, and their mission there was to have pilots on some were on 5-minute alert, some were on 10-minute alert. The 5-minute pilots had to be ready to be out of the building into the airplane and ready to take off in 5 minutes. So this night, Phil was on alert, and there came an unidentified, and one of the very young pilots scrambled to take out to, and Phil said he came back about an hour, white as a sheet, trembling, scared, and don't know what he said. Phil never told me, but it was kind of known that he saw something unidentified, something from outer space. Now, it was hushed up, never talked about again, never ever, but now, you know, they are talking about they really were unidentifieds. It was kind of spooky. So, from Great Falls, he went to Kansas City, was on a tachyval team, which meant they went out and tested, if you want to say that, the other squadrons that were in the area. It was kind of a good job. It was good for promotion. 11 men on the team, two inspector pilots, Phil was one. They would go out on Sunday night or Monday morning to an outlying squadron, come back home on Thursday and write their reports, and supposed to be off, you know, Friday and Saturday and Sunday. Sounds like a good deal, right? Well, unfortunately, the commander of the team didn't like his wife. So, as soon as their reports were in, he got on the telephone and tried to find a party. He called all over looking for a party because he didn't want to go home to his wife. And he had a pin in his elbow. He couldn't fly without an instructor pilot. So Friday afternoon, either Phil or Gordy would get a call saying, there's a party up at Sault Ste. Marie, come on, let's go. What do you say to your pilot? You say, yes, sir, and go away. It was not the best idea. In the middle of this, he volunteered for Southeast Asia. It took a year for him to get to, we went down to MacDill Air Force Base where he checked out in the F-4. I decided then that I would stay in Florida rather than go back to cold Nebraska and Iowa and Kansas. So we bought our first house. What else would I say? He went there. He was another year's remote. I think it was the end of August, about my birthday time, he left. He did get home for a week for, they called it rest and recreation, R&R. But again, he was gone. Now the kids were a little older. It was not quite as stressful, but it was always, when I came home from anywhere, I could see the front of my house, and I always looked to see if there was a blue car there. If he was missing or shot down, there would be a blue car with the chaplain and the commander. So it was always a sigh of relief when I could see the front of our house. We came home, asked for a consecutive overseas, and he gave orders for England, Great Britain, Oh, that was exciting. It was a really good place. It was on the North Sea, Suffolk, which was kind of a country area. It was not sophisticated. It was, the people were most generous. It was nice. We lived on base. I'll let Lee tell you about the school. By then she was in high school. It was, the wives had it pretty good. We could get on the train at 8:30 in the morning as soon as we got the kids to school. For $2, we could go to London and back. We could spend the day in London. Lots to do in London. One of the exciting things was, well, we took the kids. We got to see the changing of the guard. We got to see the Tower of London, where the royal jewels were, and the prison where Anne Boleyn, wife of Henry VIII, was imprisoned before she was beheaded. But it was a difference in the feel of the square again. By this time, most of our friends were majors, probably coming up for promotion to lieutenant colonel, and it got political. I mean, maybe you know if you've been in the service, there's some brown-nosing that goes on. It was, you had to be nice to the commander's wife, you had to, and the word finally went around. There was a couple of, maybe a general or maybe an older colonel, that you should be very, very nice, very, very nice. And they said if you weren't, he would not make rank. So I told Phil, sorry, you'll never make lieutenant colonel if I have to do that. Well, he was good enough, he made lieutenant colonel without that. We got ready to come home. Orders came through, and it was for Eglin Air Force Base up at Destin, Florida. It was a great assignment. It was on the Gulf, fishing, boating, everything was wonderful. The base was, the BX and the commissary of the base were almost as good as they were anywhere. We were excited. A month later, they were changed to England Air Force Base, Alexandria, Louisiana, in the middle of nowhere. I actually sat down and cried. It was not what I wanted or what anybody wanted. I have to tell you, as bad as we thought it was going to be, we lived off base. We had civilian neighbors, and Bud and Janet became our best friends forever. Bud and Phil have both died. Janet and I are still friends. And the best part was, our two boys married Louisiana girls. I don't know how some of you are, but I know people who have daughter-in-laws that are really not very good. But I have been blessed. I have a wonderful, wonderful daughter. She takes care of me. I have two daughter-in-laws that are also just great, great people. I have been so blessed for that to have happened. Any stories from England else I need to tell? So on to our last assignment, which was George Air Force Base in Victorville, California. It was good. By now we were empty nesters, so I went to work for the first time in over 20 years. I worked in a dress shop. That was pretty neat. Phil's job then was to teach German pilots to fly the F-4. It was an easy assignment. Hours were 9 to 6, off weekends. You know, if you've been in the service, that's not normal. It was. So I had come back to Kansas to see my sisters, and there was a house for sale in Duluth, an old stone house. I know what house that was. So we went and looked at it and fell in love with it. It took me a year to convince Phil that really it was a good move. It was getting close to where he was going to have another remote, so he put in his papers to retire. He retired on April 1st, 1980. On April 8th, we drove down the driveway. I don't know how many of you know our house in Duluth. It was the dam for our pond. We drove down it, and behind us was a big van with our furniture. And all I could think of was, that dam is not built for that big. What if the dam broke? It didn't. It was. So that's this part of my story. I know lots more. If you want to, I'll be around if you want to visit or just visit about our life now. As the Carneys say, that's it. That's all. Thank you very much for listening to me. Talk to you just a little bit about being an Air Force brat.
So growing up being a military brat, I met people along the way, and some really hated it, and some thought it was great. Now, I didn't hate it, I didn't really love it either, but as I grew into an adult, I really grew to appreciate it, because I got to see a lot of the world that a lot of people don't get to see. So some people live their whole lives and never go more than maybe 500 miles away from home. And I'm lucky enough that I've lived in a whole bunch of states. So I was born in California. We lived in Iowa, Montana, Missouri, Florida, and Louisiana. And we also lived almost 4 years in England. And along the way, there were a couple of times when we got to go with Dad when he was on a temporary duty assignment for a couple of months. But those were the places where we lived. So I got to meet people. One of the things that always struck me was the different ways that people talk. So like in some parts of the country, it's a coyote. In some parts of the country, it's a coyote. And you learn these things when you travel around. There were also a couple of short stays in Alabama and Florida. And then that was back in the days. Air travel was not something you didn't just go hop on a plane and go somewhere. So when we were away from family, we would travel, sometimes go on vacation to go see family. Every time we moved, we took, it was, the moves that I remember, we were in 2 cars. Dad would get to drive the sports car with one kid. Mom had the sedan with the other 2 kids and the big dog. And sometimes when we were on vacation, it was Mom and Dad in the front, the 3 kids and the big dog with a boxer in the back seat. So the dog got half the back seat and we got the other half. And the dog would stick his head out the window, and occasionally he would cut one, and so it was a long end, and you're like, oh man. So my dad was often gone for periods of time, which was hard for my mom. As a little kid, you don't pay that much attention to it, but I remember when Dad was in Alaska, and we were 2, 3, and 4 years old, and I have a vague memory of walking into a bedroom one day, and my mom was crying, and I didn't quite understand why. And it was just because she was my dad. The other time that he was gone for a long time was when he went to Thailand, when he was during the Vietnam War. And Mom had pulled the 3 of us aside and said, okay, we're going to take Dad to the airport. Try not to cry in front of him. Don't cry. It's going to be hard enough for him as it is. And I remember trying to be brave, but the reality of it was, inside, I was terrified that he was not coming home. I was 12, so I understood what war meant. So I can't even imagine how hard that was. Well, you talked about it a little bit, looking for I guess I never thought about a blue car, but that would be. hard. And then when we were stationed in Missouri, where he was on the tactical evaluation team, he was gone a lot. So he'd be gone 3 or 4 days, and he'd be home for a while, and 3 or 4 days. It's a good thing my mom was a pretty independent person, because she couldn't, if something broke, she couldn't wait for my dad to come home and fix it. Or if one of us acted up, she couldn't say, wait till your father gets home. So she had to be both mom and dad sometimes. We moved about every 18 months to 3.5 years or so. And the hardest parts were leaving our friends and not knowing what to expect at the next place. So my mom helped with the not knowing what to expect in the new place. She knew we were moving, whether we wanted to or not. The government said, you're going, you're going. So this was back in the days before the internet. She would write to the Chamber of Commerce and get information about the area that we were going to be in. And then they would send brochures and stuff, and she would start to really hype up. Well, we could do this, we could do that. And for some reason, the one that I remember, I was about 6 years old. We were moving to Great Falls, Montana, and I remember the brochure that came about the giant springs in Great Falls. And the only thing I can figure is they had fish farms at the springs, and I thought that was really cool. I guess when you're 6, that's a big deal. So she would make it seem more like an adventure. So we would look forward to wherever we were going. Let's see here. Oh, as for friends, well, you learn to make friends in the new places. If we lived on base, it was always easier to make new friends because everybody was away from their families. They were all from someplace else, so you made new friends fairly easily. We did live off base a couple of times, and you always felt like an outsider because all the kids in the school had grown up together, they'd gone to school together, and they really were not interested in being friends with a new kid. So those were always difficult assignments, which is why my favorite places were Iowa, Montana, and England, because that's when we lived on base.
Yeah, I got one more story before you get there. Okay. I've got one story that I was one of the most memorable moments of my living with Phil. We went to England Air Force Base where he was avionics squadron commander. And we'd been there maybe 2 or 3 months. Phil had, kind of settled in. The head of the maintenance, Colonel Jones, called him and the other 2 maintenance squadron commanders into his office and said, okay, we're going to assign each squadron colors. So you use those colors to bring up the esprit de corps of your squadron. And he said, Goldie, you're commander of the FMS, the Field Maintenance Squadron. That's the most important squadron, so you get power red. And I don't remember the name of the munitions maintenance squadron, but he was really important because he was in charge of missiles with nuclear warheads. And then he got to Phil, well, the little black boxes and these things that you have in charge are, you get purple. They gave him purple paint that turned out to be sissy lavender. It was. So Phil and the first sergeant, Sergeant Gay, put their heads together and they said, let's do it up. They took this sissy lavender paint, they painted their signposts purple. They had an artist in the squadron that kind of purplized the Flying Tiger, which was the wings insignia. And the next day, Colonel Jones, they had called Phil in and said, you will paint that back immediately. You will paint that back to white. Phil came home and he kind of laughed and he said, I think I'll leave it a couple of days. And a couple of days later, Colonel Jones called him back in and said, Phil, the other 2 squadrons followed your lead. They've painted their signposts too. They've done the same thing, so you can leave it. And that particular squad. It was a small group. I think there was maybe 5 officers and maybe 40 enlisted, from airman 3rd to senior master sergeants. When it came time for Phil's farewell, Sergeant Gay, the first sergeant, came to Phil and said, everybody wants to come to your farewell party, but the young airmen do not have the money to go to the NCO club for a steak dinner and, you know, that. Would it be okay if we did hamburgers and hot dogs in the park and beer? Jerry said it would be about $3 and most of them could afford to come. Of course, Phil said yes. That night, I still get choked up. Women came to me and hugged my neck and said, your husband saved our marriage. Your husband helped us out of very, very financial difficulties. Your husband gave us help when our kids were acting up. It was truly a tribute to Phil. At the end, Jerry, the first sergeant, said, let's lift our beer cans to toast. And every last one of them stood up and clapped. And it was a genuine ovation. It was not an obligatory, which sometimes when the general left, you had to stand up. It was, to me, one of the best moments of Phil's whole career. Sorry, I missed that when I told the story. Anyway, do you have any more to say?
I do. Sorry, hope we're not boring you too long. So, growing up, I thought my dad had a really cool job. He was a fighter pilot. And we used to get to go to some of the air shows. The Thunderbirds would come to the bases that we were at. And I don't know if you've ever been to an air show, but I just remember you see these planes, they come roaring down the runway there, and they would come around and they would buzz the people, and then they get to the end and they turn on the afterburners and go straight up in the air. And I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to be that. So that was my plan when I was a little kid. Then I got close to time to go to college, and I found out that they wouldn't let women fly fighter planes. I was like, what? Huh. Well, what a bunch of sexist crap that is. Okay, fine, I'm not going into the Air Force then. My brother got to be in the Air Force, but never mind that my eyesight was so bad, I would never have qualified to be a pilot. And the other thing is, I used to get really bad motion sickness and would throw up. And yeah, that's not too cool if you're in a fighter plane. That would be like, oh, gross. So anyway, when I was a teenager, we moved to England. And that was, so I think we originally had orders for Clark Air Force Base. Mom had gotten us all excited about Clark, and then it got changed to England. So I was just turned 13. I told my mother, I'm not going. I'm not leaving my country, and you can't make me. I'm going to go live with my grandma. Well, Mom pulled rank. She says, I'm the mom, you're the kid, we're going, end of discussion. I was like, okay. And it actually ended up being my favorite place. Maybe because I was a teenager, so it was formative years. The high school that I went to for 10th and 11th grades was a semi-boarding school. So there was only one high school that serviced about 4 bases. So we'd get on a bus in the morning, on Monday morning. It was a 2-hour bus ride up to school. We'd stay in the dorms during the week and then go home on the weekends. This is a real growing up experience without having to be in college or someplace like that. You're still in kind of a real protective environment. But I figured out real quick that Mom wasn't there to come back and knock on, say, Lee, get up. And you went back to sleep, it's time to get up. Oh yeah, no, Mom wasn't there to do that. So if you didn't get up when the alarm clock went off, you didn't get breakfast. So I learned real quick that you needed to get up and go. The other thing that I remember a lot about England is because we were all so far away from home, and again, it was way too expensive for 5 of us to fly back to the States to visit family. So we knew that wasn't even an option. So we formed our own family. There was one Christmas, I think there were 5 or 6 families. We all got together, people drew names, so we had a gift exchange, we had Thanksgiving dinner. It was just a really good time. And I made friends over there that I still stay in touch with, and that was 50 years ago. So it's kind of fun. And I run into people sometimes that I find out they were stationed someplace we were, so then we have to try and compare notes. Were you there when I was there? So it's kind of fun. You know, I got to see a whole lot of things all over the world. So we got to see places like Custer's Last Stand in Montana. And the day that we were there, I remember it was cold and windy, kind of like it is out there today, except that the sun wasn't shining. And I remember standing there thinking, what an awful place to die. I was 10, and I'm thinking, why would a 10-year-old think that? But I was kind of a weird little kid, so. When we were in England, we got to go see The Changing of the Guard at Buckingham Palace. We went to see Agatha Christie's play Mousetrap in London, which at the time was the longest running play ever. I got to see concerts. I got to see Elton John, Gilbert O'Sullivan, Engelbert Humperdinck. I got to see the taping of the Cliff Richards show, and you probably don't know who Cliff Richards was. He was a big star in Europe, but he had one of his regulars was a young singer named Olivia Newton-John. So I got to see her before she was famous. Let's see. I think that's about all I have.
Okay, one more thing. All right, one more. Kurt Schmidt last week when I talked to him said he'd been to a museum in Topeka, and I don't know what it was.
Combat Air Museum.
The Combat Air Museum. There was a plane there, an F-4 on display that came from the Triple Nickel, which was where Phil flew out of in Thailand. And I thought, that plane there could have been one that Phil flew. So if you get a chance, go down and see that F-4 and think, yeah, that's the plane Phil flew. Okay, thanks again.
I think Grace could keep reminiscing more little stories, couldn't she? So after we're done, you might see if some more stories with Lee also. So let's give her another round of applause.
Thank you for having me, and thank you all for coming. Thank you very much.
If you get a chance, there's a replica, Pastor Pierce, right?
Yeah.
Something, of this purple plant.
Oh, the purple
The
tiger.
purple tiger in Phil's display here. So you'll have to take a peek at that particular artifact that we have. At this time, if Gretchen Cope could come up. Each year, for the veterans that are here today, we give you an honorary year's membership in the Onega Historical Society. We hope that you'll fill out the application that comes with this, and I'm going to have Gretchen hand those out. So if you are a veteran here, raise your hand and she will bring the certificate to you and the application. You'll notice there's a part blanked out on the application. Your fees are blanked out. So all you have to do is fill it out and give it to us, and you'll have an honorary membership for a year, which means that we can contact you for pies and cookies.
That's right.
Or you can volunteer to help put together displays. As you walk around here, you'll see that we need help in several areas around here. And yes, we need needle workers too, to do some sewing and stitching. So stand up if you're a veteran here today so Gretchen can see where you're at. Now you might already be a member. And there's a lot of veterans out there in the other area. As she's passing those out, we'll have Linda Rodenkamp come up, and you want to move over there?
I'll move over here by Roger. I don't mind. How much?
This is the, each year I'm in a group called Crafting for Others, and one of our projects is to create lap quilts for veterans. And we like to award those lap quilts at a special ceremony, and this is one ceremony. We also have a flag retirement ceremony in the spring. At this time, I would like Bob Magnet to come forward. Bob and Janet. And Bob and I think all three of your kids are here, so if those three kids would come up. Bob? Bob's brother is here. At least two of them, I think, are here. If you want to come up here with Bob and stand, you may do that also.
This is for you.
Bob served in the U.S. Navy, as he shared with us before. I honestly did not know he had done that till one of his daughters was here talking about Dad being a part of the military. Let's give Bob a round of applause for his service. If you are related to Bob, please stand up. And we have all these people out there in the other area, but stand up and recognize your grandpa.
He's an okay guy. He's a brother-in-law, but I claim him.
I tell you what, Tom walked in, and Tom and Bob, to me, look a lot alike. And Bob was here the other day, and I saw Bob, and he looked like Bob. Well, Tom walks in, and I think, gosh, Bob sure cleaned up nice. And he grew a foot in a week. So I had the two of you confused for a while. Now that can't possibly be my gray hair. So once again, let's give them a round of applause. Are you going to be around? That's Bob's. That's yours, Bob.
Thank you.
And we do, on our lap quilts, we do put a hanger on the back of it in case they want to hang them on the wall.
Okay.
Rather than wrap up in them. The next person, Sandy Ernst Rogers. Sandy, can you come up, or shall we come to you?
It's gonna be hard to get out.
Yeah. If all of you could turn towards Sandy, back in the corner, and her sister is here with him. Is there anyone else here with Sandy today?
Nope.
Sandy served in the United States Air Force as a nurse. And as she mentioned, she did not see combat, but she saw the results of combat. And I know that she has a lot of different stories that you can share. Thank you, Sandy, for your service. If Larry Justice would come up. And Nancy and Larry's kids, if you will come up.
Oh, I thought he left.
As Larry had mentioned, he served in the United States National Guard. Is that right, Larry?
Yes.
Do you remember that? Yeah. And you were active duty then too, right?
Yeah, I went.
Why don't you tell us a little bit more about your service?
I was activated in, 68. I went to Colorado Springs for 2 years, activation out there.
Very good.
After I spent 6 months in South Carolina. Boot camp. Then my first summer home, we went to Fort Ripley, Minnesota for 2 weeks camp. And if you hadn't seen mosquitoes that long, you haven't seen mosquitoes. Then the next 2 summers, I spent 2 weeks boot camp in Fort Riley, and I was out there in 1966 and had a tornado go through our camp. When it wasn't the same one that hit Topeka, but it was a different one. But we survived it, so.
Very good, thank you. You can lay out the slide. You can wrap up in that in these cold winter days. If Lynn Rush. Oh, he left? Okay. We do have one I'm going to send in the mail to Wayne Winstror. How many of you know the Win? Yeah, would you please? Thank you. He served in the U.S. Army National Guard. I found, as we did our Vietnam project, we found a lot of the guards, the people that had gone to the guards, actually ended up serving active duty. And Wayne was one that served active duty in Vietnam. He was there for 11 months in the jungle. And that's about all he'll say about it. So we are sending this one to him. He lives in Texas. And to thank her for her military service. Maybe women, maybe spouses aren't exactly enlisted, although I think they're enlisted. We would like to present this to Grace for her sharing with us today. Now, if there is a veteran here today that does not have their lap quilt yet, it's not that we don't want you to have one, it's sometimes we just don't know. So I have a couple extra ones up here today. If you would like to talk to me about that, I'd love to be able to award you a lap quilt for your service. At this time, we usually trek down to the schoolhouse to take down the flag that's down there and retire it for the summer, or for the winter. Well, it's quite a trek, although we have a wonderful sidewalk now. But it's cold out, so I took the flag down, and if our veterans would come forward, Dave and Larry and Peyton, we're going to do a token retirement of that flag. This flag up here we'll leave up all year long, but we usually take the schoolhouse flag down. So if you could stand while they retire this flag. Thank you. Thank you very much. You may be seated now. Thank you very much. You know, our veterans that are helping us out are retiring. Well, I didn't say that quite right. How many of you have lost your finger dexterity? And you go to fold something, it doesn't quite fold quite right. Well, our veterans are getting to that age where they have a little trouble getting their fingers to work quite right. So we might refold the flag, but we do the best we can. At this time, Linda, you want to grab a couple and bring those cups up for the door prizes? We have a bunch of door prizes that have been donated by different people, or I don't want you to take this wrong, but we run these garage sales, and we have some nice stuff come into garage sales. So we pull out the stuff that's patriotic to use as door prizes. Just a couple announcements. If you haven't signed in, please do so. Have you all had your 5 tickets? Did you sign in? Get your 5 tickets, because they're going into door prizes. I want to thank the variety of people who brought desserts. There's quite a variety over there, and I think you can all have 2 or 3 pieces of whatever you want. And we have coffee from the coffee barn, so you know it will be good. None of us that are members of the Historical Society are known for our coffee. The garage sale will be open for anybody that wants to just go through there. We will be packing it all up and sending it to Twin Valley Developmental Center for their stores. It's a free will donation if you see something you would really like to have. We also want you to take time to enjoy our museum today. We're very, very proud of our museum. Okay. Door prize number 1, well, whatever number it is.